Hello everyone, another random rumination for you here today. This isn't a part of any particular series I'm doing or anything, but just a thought that's been running through my mind, which I think a lot of people who are into the conspiracy culture can really get along with and understand. So I released a video about crop circles recently, and some guy left a comment basically saying something along the lines of, this is all to do with UFOs created by Nazis or something like that. It's old world tech, and it's they've been in obviously Antarctica or within, maybe alluding to the Hollow Earth idea that they've been hidden away and they're still manipulating us today, and that kind of attitude. And so someone commented underneath and it made me laugh. Something like, mate, you're about 4 years behind on your conspiracy research, you'll get there eventually. And that made me laugh. That made me laugh. Because it just made me think that learning the truth really is a process of learning many truths. That's to see the next truth, if you get what I mean. So how can I explain this? So when you start learning the truth, I struggle to come up with names for us. Truth is one word, or a conspiracy theorist, or someone said a reality analyst. To be get all funky about it. But whatever it is you want to call us, if you end up being one of these people who starts questioning the narrative, let's say, and you become whatever you want to call that, there's usually something like one topic that gets you really into it at first, isn't there? Something random that, to use the phrase, it wakes you up. But that isn't to obviously equate that with the leftist liberal term of woke and wokeness. This is something else. This isn't that. This is beyond left-right paradigms. This is like seeing through all of it, including the left-right paradigm. You know what I mean? Opening your eyes and finally not being asleep to the control in the world. So something happens, usually either a major global event, and I know some people will be furious that I just used the word global, but consider it a slip of the tongue. But some worldwide event happens. 9/11's a good example. Something that just echoes around the world, or the recent coronavirus thing is another good example. There's just something, whatever it is. It's usually either a big global, worldwide catastrophe of some kind, or it's just a personal problem happens, which leads you to question certain little things. I find people who suffer from narcissistic abuse very quickly get onto the whole demonic aspect of things, and then that quickly leads to discovering that the world is run by narcissists, and it doesn't matter what topic it is, okay? But whatever happens, or whatever topic gets you to open your eyes for the first time, you inevitably start snowballing down the hill. One connection gets made after another, and you realise it's all interconnected. It isn't just one topic that you've inadvertently started to research. You realise that one thing you've discovered is connected to the other thing, and then the next thing, and then the next form of control, and then that's then housed within another form of control. And then you start barreling down from one rabbit hole to another, digging deep into each one, and your paradigm shifts constantly. You believe one thing one week, and then the next week you're believing another thing, because you're certain each truth you find is the truth. And if you're honest and don't get stuck on one topic, you end up going through them all, and then 8-10 years down the line, you kind of roughly at the end of your research, you kind of figured it all out. But in that time, and it does take like a decade, it truly does, to actually thoroughly get through it all and comprehend it all and process it all and go through the motions of believing one thing heavily before believing another thing heavily. It's a long, drawn out, stressful, family friend losing process, and you change a lot. So another typical narrative a lot of people fall into, which I've observed by asking people, who come to my Telegram and tell me their story, is they maybe grew up slightly religious, lost their faith, grew up rebellious teenager, drugs, drink, sex, whatever, partying, get into the New Age stuff, start getting into all the Gnostic New Age thinking about spirituality, consciousness exploration, whatever it is, some kind of New Age ideology, because they're craving some kind of spiritualism, but they don't want it to be God. And then from that, they eventually somehow wake up to the deception of the New Age agenda, which goes with the New World Order agenda, And then they start to go down the rabbit hole, learn all these other random truths about Satanism and the Luciferians that control the world, secret societies, starts barreling. Then eventually they get to God, they get to Jesus, and then they found the truth at the end. That's usually where it goes. And that process could either take somebody 2 years or 20 years. Because the biggest leap at the end is taking that leap of faith to realize that, well, damn, God's real. So's Jesus, and that's what all this is actually about. That's why there's a conspiracy. That's why all of this is happening, because we're a part of this grand narrative that's been going on since the dawn of creation, and it is a creation. And that's the ultimate kind of end truth you end up at. But until you get there, you kind of have to go through believing many of the deceptions first. Because the thing is, that whole New Age thing I talked about is a part of the truth movement. It's a subsect of the truther culture. Many people who are in that New Age Gnostic worldview thinking angle. And then there's the New Age hippie types, and then there's the alchemical, hermetic, Gnostic types. But they themselves believe they found the ultimate truth and have seen through all the deception. And they have their own belief that what they've discovered is going to free them from the situation, you know. And then it takes some time, but inevitably, if they're not prideful and they're willing to, you know, humble themselves a little bit and realize that their mastery over the creation is not going to save them in some way, or their ability to subdue or control the ethereal or spiritual realm or the physical realm in some way isn't going to save them, they will eventually realize that it is God and it is Jesus and it is all that stuff, you know, the devil, Lucifer, all that involved, the big war, you know. They'll get there eventually, but they have to take that step. But until they get there, they'll believe they've found the truth. And, you know, there's other major truths along the way, isn't there, that people fall into. So there's a big one is the flat earth movement. A lot of people have had their eyes opened and have become very awake because of that concept and that idea, and just thinking about all the philosophical rabbit holes that movement can lead you down. The concept that we have been lied to on such a huge scale, and that it is actually possible for them to convince everybody of such a lie based on how powerful their control systems are. Whether it's true or not, you do learn about just how powerful their systems that they have in place are to deceive people. You know, if anything you take from it, take that away from it, you know. A lot of people get stuck, unfortunately, on that one topic and will not leave it and cannot go and look at anything else, and they think everything hinges on that one idea. I have other ideas about that. I think it's important to take into consideration, but there are other concepts out there worth looking into. And I think there are other concepts out there that are a lot more useful to convince people who are still asleep. Because I think the whole flat earth concept, you know, and the firmament stuff is a bit too much for the people who are asleep to go straight to. I think it actually, if you go straight to somebody with that first, you push them away more than bring them closer to the truth, unfortunately. Then I think the Mandela effect was another huge one that kind of woke people up en masse. People started noticing reality was changing all around them, you know. And again, that had its own two camps. It had the New Age camp of a Mandela effect explanation, you know. It's all about frequency, quantum physics. It's about consciousness and human mass consciousness and how we create reality with our own collective conscious mind, and how, you know, that's all being warped and messed with by the evil nefarious people, and it's up for us to take the control back with our own consciousness and expand our consciousness, or some nonsense like that usually. Or you have the Christian camp, where it's actually maybe people are messing with God's original timeline, trying to change it so Lucifer can change the outcome of his end result, or what happens to him in the end. Or there's the other biblical angle, which I actually saw recently from somebody's pretty cool rant on a Telegram group, an old video from like 6 years ago. But he basically says something absolutely earth-shaking happened in the future that is rippling through back in time, and it's Jesus Christ returning, which is an interesting theory, you know. And the impact of that ripple is, the closer we get to it, the more crazy things start to change in the Mandela effect terminology. So there are many camps on how to interpret every single subject. This is the thing, you know. You could look at the Illuminati control system, and you can see it from the biblical Luciferian worship, ancient serpent Nephilim worship cults for what it is. or you can view it from there are numerous factions of Illuminati people, and they're just a bad faction, and there are good factions who can fight against it. The knowledge is sacred, and they're just abusing the sacred knowledge for their own nefarious purposes. But then there are good wizards versus bad wizard type thinking, there's white witchcraft and black witchcraft type thinking, this whole duality, good versus evil stuff, which, a lot of people fall into that camp as well instead. It doesn't matter what the topic is, there's always these two camps, but everyone eventually ends up, I would say, if they humbly, sincerely search for all the truth, they will end up realizing it's the biblical perspective. That's where it actually lies. And everything is just kind of a deception to get you to think otherwise. And usually it involves making you believe you are a god of some kind, is the alternative to that. Whatever it is, the end result is always you end up as a god somehow, and you can change the world and save the world by changing it with your own godlike abilities, which are just dormant, that's all, and you just need to unlock it somehow by doing the right mantra, realigning the right chakras, performing the right rituals, drawing the right sigils, whatever it is you want to say to get there, whatever it is, sleeping with the right interdimensional alien. I don't know. There's plenty of new age avenues out there which lead to the same road. You're a god, it's all up to you. You create reality. It's all in your head type of stuff. And the real truth above all that is, no, there is a God. He's in control. This is all a part of his plan. And there are agents out there who are doing everything they can to make sure you don't realize that. And they're trying their best to change the plan. But everything they do kind of makes the plan happen. I guess is kind of what's going on there. And this isn't a Gnostic demiurge evil god situation, which is, what a lot of Gnostics believe, that the God of the Bible is an evil, cruel prison keeper who created our bodies as flesh prisons for our souls, and the true good God is above him. What that basically is a story of is Lucifer, who wants to place himself above God, saying, nah, God's evil and cruel. He just doesn't want you to buy that apple because he knows you'll be like him, and he wants to keep you down, but if you bite the apple, then you'll be as gods, in good and evil, The irony being, we were already made in the image of God. We already walked with God. We couldn't have been any more closer to God as possible in the beginning, but we were deceived to think there was more, And I think a lot of people do forget. And I think it's hard to see this, because there's so much corruption within the world right now, as Satan does is working hard, to dominate this physical world as best he can before his time comes, and it's hard to see through it. But I think we forget that this creation is incredible, and we are amazing beings within it, created in God's image. This really is, other than obviously the new earth and the heaven, but in what we've got so far, this truly is something impressively amazing that we're experiencing, this life. We're just blind to it. We've just been beaten down, and we think everything's pain and misery all the time. This place is horrible. This place is awful. We've been beaten to believe that God is cruel and evil, and what kind of cruel God would allow so much suffering in the world? How can there be God when bad things happen type of attitude? And we forget that actually we are insanely complex and wonderful spiritual beings in a flesh body, but the flesh itself and the creation itself is all a part of the whole creation of spiritualism and physicality. It all works in tandem, and it's all one system, which is why when the Nephilim died physically, their spirits still remained here and still act here. We're blessed that we still have our embodied spirit, that we can interact and experience things in ways that some entities are so envious of that they're willing to kill and destroy us for it. And I think that people forget that, life and existence truly is a miracle. It's an insanely complex, psychedelic, beautifully orchestrated system. And we're in it, and we're part of it. And we were made in the image of the creator who created it, and we get to interact with it as though we were him, in a sense. Though, of course, we're not. Don't let that go too far into thinking, yes, well, I am God then, and therefore bow down to me. You know, there's many people who have attempted to do that in the world, you know, and they never ended well for them in the end when you actually think about it. I don't know. I'm on a rant. I'm on a rave. Just one random thought after another here. We'll call it a stream of consciousness, shall we? But it's fun to say all these things. You know, I guess what I was saying at the start is it's all a process. You know, when you learn the truth for the first time, you know, you have to go through the motions. You've got to go through believing loads of stuff, and then you believe more stuff that supersedes the old stuff you used to believe, and then as time goes on, you know, you'll end up in one camp, and then you'll shift to another camp and think, how could I ever believe what that camp believes? And you'll be torn to and fro. You'll have loads of leaders that you'll follow who you think are telling the ultimate truth, and you know, and eventually it'll all just come down to you alone with God. And that's the only true leader you'll ever really need in the end, you know. That's what it'll come down to eventually. Because all men will let you down. Unfortunately, you know. I mean, I'm not a guru, I'm not a leader. My son's there waving at me. Right, guy, I'm gonna have to go. But just, you know, I hope you enjoyed the random rant. Thanks for listening, and as always, God bless.